This morning, the world was shocked by a massive missile attack that destroyed the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, Israel. The missiles, named Jaibar, were launched by Iran in response to a U.S. airstrike days earlier targeting Iranian military facilities. This attack had enormous consequences, not only destroying the U.S. Embassy, but also causing severe damage to several key districts of Tel Aviv. This event signals an escalation of tensions between two major powers, which could destabilize the Middle East and the entire world. The U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, long a symbol of American presence in the region, became one of the primary targets, reflecting the scale of Iran's reaction to the airstrike. The destruction caused by the Jaibar missiles was devastating, demonstrating Iran's destructive power. Thick black smoke rose over Tel Aviv, shrouding the sky in a dangerous haze that stretched for several kilometers from the impact site. Around the embassy, buildings collapsed with a roar. Debris littered streets once bustling with people, and sirens wailed continuously, heightening the atmosphere of fear in a city previously considered one of the safest in the region. Eyewitnesses reported seeing massive explosions that obliterated several buildings in an instant, forcing thousands of residents to seek immediate shelter in safer locations. The attack came shortly after a speech by Iran's supreme leader, who days earlier had issued harsh threats against the United States. In his speech, he declared that all American citizens were now targets following the U.S. airstrike on Iran. These words served as a clear warning, and soon after, Jaibar missiles began striking various points in Tel Aviv, with the U.S. Embassy as the primary target. This attack was not only a military operation, but also a symbol of the escalating diplomatic conflict between two great powers. For Iran, the destruction of the U.S. Embassy was a clear signal to the United States, which it considers its main enemy. The attack strategy employed by Iran surprised many, particularly military analysts. The assault began with an organized missile launch lasting over 40 minutes without interruption. Due to the sheer number of missiles, it was extremely difficult to stop the attack. Despite Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system, known for its effectiveness against smaller-scale missile strikes, it proved unable to counter such a massive and coordinated assault. Some sources report that Israel's defense system failed to prevent the majority of Jaibar missiles from hitting their targets in central Tel Aviv, including the U.S. Embassy, which was the main focus of the attack. According to the latest data from Israel's Ministry of Defense, approximately 40% of the launched Jaibar missiles reached their targets in central Tel Aviv. The consequences were catastrophic. Several key buildings, including hotels, offices, and other public structures, were destroyed. Hundreds are reported dead, with an even greater number injured, as Israeli emergency services worked tirelessly to evacuate residents and provide medical assistance. Rescue teams deployed in the affected areas continue to operate without pause, despite many zones remaining dangerous. Survivors are in a state of panic and uncertainty, hoping help arrives in time to save them from further destruction. The most severe consequence of the attack was the complete destruction of the U.S. Embassy, located in central Tel Aviv. When the first missile struck, a powerful explosion shook surrounding buildings, reducing the embassy to rubble. Some eyewitnesses near the site described a horrifying scene. The shock wave rattled the ground and sky, and the once sturdy building collapsed instantly, burying most of the embassy staff. Many American citizens were trapped under the debris, and rescue operations began immediately. Israeli rescuers were quickly mobilized to search for those trapped, but the extent of the damage made evacuation extremely challenging. Surviving staff reported hearing a loud explosion just before the power grid failed, after which the building began to collapse, trapping them in darkness and debris. This attack was not just physical destruction, it also shattered the sense of security that Israel, known for its advanced Iron Dome missile defense system, had carefully maintained. Israeli military experts stated that the attack was unexpected and bypassed their defenses. The Iron Dome, which typically intercepts most missiles aimed at Israel, was overwhelmed by the volume and intensity of the strikes in a short period. The Jaibar attack marked the beginning of a new, more deadly series of assaults that caught Israeli forces off guard, who until now had felt secure due to their defenses. In Washington, news of the embassy's destruction prompted an immediate response. The U.S. president convened an emergency meeting with military and intelligence advisors to devise immediate countermeasures. American leaders declared that the attack would not go unpunished and vowed a resolute response against Iran. However, despite planned retaliatory measures, Iran's threat is becoming increasingly real. Iran's supreme leadership issued an official statement confirming that this attack is only the first phase of a much larger retaliation. This statement further escalated the already tense international situation, heightening global fears about the conflict's consequences. The Iranian leadership's statements sparked widespread alarm worldwide. Iranian officials stated they are already planning far more extensive retaliatory measures, not only against the United States but also against its allies globally. In a speech broadcast live on Iranian state media, the supreme leader categorically declared that this is just the beginning of something much larger, and that the U.S. and its allies would witness attacks they could not even imagine. This threat further intensified tensions in the Middle East and altered the global geopolitical landscape. International leaders began preparing for the worst, as Iran's threat becomes increasingly tangible and alarming. Military and strategic analysts predict that Iran's response will involve far more advanced military technologies, possibly yet to be revealed to the world. Intelligence sources close to the U.S. government report that Iran, now supported by several allied nations, has prepared substantial forces for further strikes. Countries like Russia and China, which have so far shown support for Iran, are increasingly declaring solidarity, exacerbating tensions with the U.S. and its allies. In addition to conventional strikes, Iran is expected to launch massive cyber attacks that could damage critical infrastructure worldwide, worsening the consequences of this tension. Through official statements, senior Iranian officials claim they also have the capability to conduct highly dangerous cyber attacks. These could harm critical infrastructure in the U.S. and its allies across various regions, including energy, communication, and financial systems. Global cybersecurity experts have begun warning of the danger of large-scale cyber attacks that could follow military actions. If this threat materializes, cyber attacks could paralyze Western nations without requiring direct physical intervention. In the coming hours, the world may witness cyber attacks targeting vital infrastructure, further escalating the already high international tension. Iran is widely known for its expertise in cyber warfare, and this capability could now become a new threat, further complicating the crisis in Israel. The situation is becoming increasingly tense and uncontrollable. Local authorities immediately declared a state of emergency to warn citizens of the possibility of larger retaliatory strikes. The Israeli government began evacuating areas deemed particularly vulnerable, with Tel Aviv at the center of attention. The Israel Defense Forces were deployed to protect critical facilities, but concern continues to grow. Residents caught in the epicenter of the tension are experiencing anxiety and fear of a broader escalation. Meanwhile, Tel Aviv hospitals report a sharp increase in the number of injured from the attacks. According to some reports, hospitals are overwhelmed with patients, most suffering from burns, physical injuries, and wounds caused by debris from destroyed buildings. Evacuating residents and providing medical assistance are top priorities, but these efforts are hindered by the constant threat of new strikes. Beyond the Middle East, some countries with close ties to Iran began expressing their support. Iran's allies, including Russia and China, immediately declared full solidarity with Iran following the retaliatory strikes. The attack perpetrated by the United States against Iran is an unacceptable provocation, stated an official spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs in an official statement. We support Iran's right to self-defense. This solidarity intensifies the growing international tension, increasing uncertainty in a world already shaken by military strikes. Russia, which has long maintained close ties with Iran, also warned the U.S. against escalating the situation further. The solidarity shown by these countries underscores that the tension will have consequences not only for the U.S. and Israel, but for the entire world. Globally, these attacks have sparked deep concern. Several European and Middle Eastern countries with close ties to the U.S. have also begun heightening their vigilance, both in terms of military defense and diplomatic strategies. European governments convened emergency meetings to prepare for potential further consequences of these attacks, which could clearly lead to even greater regional tension. The U.S. government is now in a challenging position, facing a much stronger response than anticipated. In Washington, officials continue to discuss and formulate measures to mitigate the situation. However, several military experts and international analysts are beginning to question the effectiveness of purely military actions. They argue that Iran's current attack shows that the U.S. can no longer rely solely on its military power to resolve this tension. Moreover, this attack demonstrates that modern warfare is not just about military strength, but also involves far more complex economic and cyber strategies. Countries worldwide are now anxiously watching the next steps of both sides. The tension is escalating, and the actions taken in the coming days could determine the direction of this major conflict. Iran's massive attack on the U.S. and Israel has caused widespread concern globally. Many fear that this attack is not only a threat to these two nations, but could lead to an escalation that might ultimately trigger a new world war. The international community, concerned about the consequences of this tension, immediately called for an emergency session of the United Nations, UN, to seek a peaceful resolution and prevent an open war that could involve many countries. However, mediation efforts currently seem extremely challenging due to the intense tension on both sides. Many nations are divided in their support, making diplomatic efforts even more complex and fraught with challenges. Every move by the involved parties now carries immense weight, given the growing likelihood of a broader conflict. Tel Aviv, once known as a symbol of stability and prosperity in the Middle East, is now plunged into terrifying uncertainty. Buildings that were once a source of national pride lie in ruins, creating a landscape of debris and devastation. Districts once filled with life and activity now appear empty and grim. Tel Aviv residents, who once felt secure, are now forced to fight for survival amid the constant threat of new attacks, seeking safer places. Some have even been forced to abandon their homes in fear. In this panicked atmosphere, many families have been separated, and people are uncertain about what lies ahead. Daily life, once normal, has turned into a struggle for survival amid an escalating conflict. Meanwhile, Israel's military, known for its defensive capabilities and advanced technology, despite being prepared for all possible scenarios, is now feeling the full impact of these attacks. Despite efforts to repel the massive strikes, Israel now faces a far more serious threat than it could have imagined. Israeli military leaders have sought assistance from allies abroad, but Iran's support from several allied nations makes this battle even more complex and brutal. With countries like Russia and China backing Iran, Israel and its allies face a much greater threat than ever anticipated. New forces supported by an increasingly strong alliance turn this war into not just a conflict between two nations, but a major battle that could involve many countries worldwide. The escalating tension in the Middle East is bringing the world to a highly dangerous moment. The United States, Israel, and Iran are now in a delicate position where each next step could shape the conflict's trajectory. The tension is intensifying as each side declares its readiness to defend its stance by any means, further fueling fears of open war. The world's attention is now focused on how these two great powers will act in the coming days, whether they will pursue a diplomatic resolution or whether further military actions will lead to an even larger conflict. As more countries become entangled in the conflict, predicting its evolution becomes increasingly difficult. The world is on edge, anxiously awaiting the outcome of this tension. This morning, the world witnessed events that not only shook the U.S. Embassy in Tel Aviv, but also opened a new chapter in an unexpected international conflict. This attack has created extraordinary uncertainty worldwide, forcing nations to reassess their defense strategies in diplomatic relations. At this moment, no one can predict with certainty what will happen next. This uncertainty, compounded by the threat of new attacks, makes finding a way out of the conflict even more challenging. One thing is certain: this strike has become an irreversible turning point in global geopolitical history, one that could reshape the landscape of international relations for years to come. The world has been drawn into unprecedented tension, and all parties must approach the next steps with caution.